The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go into 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8s. Have the promo code SGPN. Claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash. Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today. Go to sportsgamepodcast.com/rhythm, sportsgamepodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Tuesday night, roughly 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time on July 2nd. I'm your host, as always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a long episode and a fun one because it is time to get into the second round of Wimbledon. So, under the format, if you are new to the show, we are going to be covering some, not all, of the second round matchups. Whichever ones I find interesting, we're going to talk about, and then I'll save my favorite plays for the lock and dog portion at the end. So before we get into any of the actual preview for the upcoming matches, do want to take care of some housekeeping. First of all, do want to remind you once again, we have a lot of great merchandise in the SGPN merch store. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, and mugs. So if you want to show your support, you can go to the merch store and find yourself in my opinion, very comfortable piece of clothing to support the show. Plus, a reminder that you can like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder that you can rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you consume the podcast, you can show support, so you can do so once again. It's also good to have feedback, and you can leave a review, which I recommend on Spotify. Been a while since we've had a review, but hopefully some of those end up coming in. Besides that, before we get into any of the recap, do want to remind you once again, before I forget, that we do have more shows on the network, and the latest episode of SGP Stories is out on Patreon, and the guys do a Forensics Files style deep dive on the Bobby Petrino motorcycle accident that cost him his job. Plus, make sure to check out the WNBA Gambling Podcast, which is a show that I'm on with Terrell, as we have been very solid with our locks lately. So once again, if you want some basketball picks, even though the NBA season is over, WNBA season still has a long way to go, and Terrell and I have multiple episodes per week with the WNBA. Anyway, time to get into the actual recap of the first round picks. We have 2 episodes to recap because we did a first round episode for the men's and a first round episode for the women. So starting off with the lock for the men's episode, ended up winning. We had Lloyd Harris money line at -138. Absolute sweat against Mickelson. He lost the first 2 sets. Then he ended up winning the next 2. Then he ended up going up a break at 6-5. So we needed Harris, who is a very good server, to not choke. He led 30-love, and then he choked it. So we had to go to a super breaker. Mickelson did have a match point in the tie break, but he fought it off. And then eventually, Harris won one of the best match points I've ever seen. And Harris was falling all over the grass, was kind of running back and forth, and eventually had a lunging, basically a dive volley for the win. So a nice job by Lloyd Harris to get the job done, and he ended up cashing us the lock. Also won the dog, as we ended up having Monfils -1.5 sets at even money against Mannarino. Thought he'd have to put Mannarino away early. Didn't think it'd be the easiest match in the world, but Mannarino was in really bad form, and Monfils had his number over the last couple of years, and he got the job done as he ended up winning in 4 sets. For the women's episode, also won the lock. We had Bolter in straight sets at -140. Definitely not easy. Was down a break early in the first set, came back, and then ended up winning the match 7-6, 7-5. Nice backhand passing shot for the win. So Bolter was really annoying to watch because we know Maria is a slice-only player who basically will slice every single shot and force it to hit the ball past her. And Bolter's unforced errors were a serious concern, but eventually she did a good enough job of actually constructing quality points. And the issue was the put-away shot, which kind of was the Achilles heel for her for most of the match. But Bolter outplayed her in the big moments and ended up winning a really entertaining tiebreak and ended up winning a competitive 7-5 second set. So not easy, but still counts as a win nonetheless. However, we could not officially complete the 4-pick sweep. Not because we lost, though. We might complete the sweep. But since there was some rain in London yesterday, what else is new? We ended up having some delays, and our dog pick did not start. So Gulubich and Niemeyer, the over 2.5 sets, if you still want that pick, you can still take it because that match did not start. So hopefully we end up sweeping both the men's and the women's episodes. But as of right now, have to settle for 3-0 and hopefully soon to be 4-0. So once again, solid episodes in general with the locks both hitting, and we hit the dog already on the men's side. Did see a comment in the last episode where somebody was claiming my picks were bad because he thought that I had Billy Harris, even though I clearly said Lloyd in the show. So once again, if It's not my fault if you bet the wrong hairs. I said specifically Lloyd. I mentioned Mickelson. As far as I'm concerned, I can't really be more clear than that, clearer than I was. So, yeah, that guy, he lost with Billy Harris. I don't feel bad for him either way. Point is, nice win for Lloyd and nice win for Bolter, and nice job by Monfils to win in 4 sets. Hopefully, Gulubich and Niemeyer do what they're supposed to, and we get a marathon and we end up sweeping. Either way, though, time to get into the actual first round recap of the other matches on the first round. I'm not going to spend that much time going through all of them, but some headlines that did catch my eye. Not really many upsets in general. There were maybe a handful on the men's and women's side, but nothing that was extreme except for one. You saw Rublev, who ended up losing to Komensanya, which was a bit of a shocker there in 4 sets. Rublev obviously had the temper tantrum midway through the match as he was falling apart. He's been really bad basically since Dubai. I know he had a decent run on clay for a tournament or so, which he won. Besides that one tournament, he's really not done anything. And Rublev has never been a great grass player by any means, but he's never made a semi in a Grand Slam, so I did not take him in the outrights. But either way, point is we did not expect him to lose in the first round, and that was the biggest upset as a top 10 guy did lose. I think he was the only top 10 guy to lose. On the men's side, for the women's side, one of our outrights actually lost. We had Zhang, and she ended up losing to, I think it was Tan. She was up a set, and then she fell apart after that. The point is, Zhang did not come through. The main news, though, for the women's side was Sabalenka, who ended up withdrawing because of, I think it was a shoulder injury. So that was definitely something that was unexpected. But the point is, we thought we actually had a pretty solid chance with Zhang once Sabalenka withdrew to win the quarter. And then immediately that went up in flames as she lost in the first round. So Sabalenka was the biggest story, I'd say, in the entire tournament. Anytime the tournament favorite withdraws the day of the event, that's definitely not a good look. But either way, Sabalenka ended up withdrawing, which was the big storyline. Besides that, though, mentioned Rublev already. I wanted to go through a couple of other matches that caught my eye. Murray, though, ended up dropping out of singles, which is kind of weird because you figured that if Murray was going to drop out from injury before his matchup against Makic, that he was probably also going to drop out of doubles. But he decided to stay in doubles and drop out of singles. So I don't really know what that means for his future. And if he ends up trying to do Wimbledon one more time, I doubt it. This might be his last Wimbledon, and he withdrew in singles. So I find that kind of weird, but we'll see what happens. For Murray's sake, he better retire. I mean, he's been terrible. We've seen him get buried for the entire year at this point. But it did seem like Murray decided for singles he was not ready health-wise, and doubles he was, I guess. So maybe it's the last time he's in Wimbledon. We're not sure yet, but point is Murray is not in the singles event. Goffin actually took his place, and I believe he's up a set in a break. So we'll see what happens in the second, I say the continuation of that first round matchup, but point is Murray is not in the field either. Would have probably lost anyway because he stinks, but either way, I wanted to mention it. His final Wimbledon might be a doubles-only Wimbledon, which is something unexpected. Besides that, you had Korda, who ended up losing to Pericard in a crazy match, which involved no breaks for the first 4 sets. It was embarrassing. But eventually, Pericard broke through, and he was able to win the 5th set 6-3. Main reason for that, he had, I believe it was 52 aces, which is Isner territory. So a nice job by Pericard to get the job done. Korda is still an absolute clown, and I have to pull up the quote, which I'm sure some of you know that I'm about to reference because I made a joke about it on Twitter, but I'm going to make a joke about it again. Korda, a couple years ago, claimed that he was one of the favorites to win Wimbledon. That was about 2 years ago, give or take. Since that quote, he's played 2 matches in Wimbledon. He's 0-2. He lost to Pericard this year, who was a lucky loser because Fokina ended up dropping out. And he lost to Vesely last year in 4 sets. So point is Korda opened his mouth, called himself a favorite, and he's a clown. So either way, Korda once again gets eliminated in the first round. Nice job by Pericard, who made the most of being an unlucky, I should say a lucky loser after he lost to, I think it was Janvier in 4, I think, in the final qualifying round in 4 sets. But nice job by him. Anytime you break the magic number of 50 for aces, I have to mention it, and he ended up getting the job done with 1 break in the entire match. So congrats to Pericard there. 52 aces is wild. Korda did have 11 breakpoint chances. He went 0 for 11. So that kind of sums up my thoughts on Korda. Still think he's a clown. And that's kind of all the storylines that I have. Trying to think of any other matches that I want to mention briefly in passing. First match was entertaining. Of the entire event, you saw Tiafoe, speaking of American clowns, who was down 2-0 to Arnaldi and then came back. He looked really good in the final 3 sets. He won in 5. Ruud won a match on grass. Congrats to him in straight sets. Jari got buried by Shapo. Not a shock there. Jari's been kind of a mess for the last couple of months. Thompson came back from 2 sets down against Kotov as he won in 5. Besides that, I don't think anything else really surprised me. Did anything else surprise me? No. Monfils 1 and 4. Altmaier 1 and 5 against Ferry, who I don't know who that is. Alcaraz had a competitive match against Lejal. Won the first set 7-6. Second set 7-5. Did win in straight sets, but still, point is he did get the job done. Harris had the comeback against Mickelson, which cashed us the win. Kazo almost blew the massive, 7-0 tiebreak lead, I think, in the Super Breaker, and then he ended up winning anyway after blowing the lead. Vukic came back from potentially getting injured in the, I think it was third set, and ended up getting the job done in 5 against Offner. Humbert beat Shevchenko in 5, and Bublik came back from 2 sets down, thought he might roll over, and he did not. A nice job by him. Nothing else to really talk about for day 1 of the event. For day 2, Darderi 1 and 5 against Choinsky. You saw Jube, who made the great run the previous week in Mallorca, who ended up losing to Seaboth Wild, blew a 2-set lead, and lost that one 7-5 in the final set. I mentioned Pericard beating Korda. Besides that, Billy Harris, who was the home country guy who played well in the last couple of events, lost in the first round to Munar. Shelton ended up finishing on the second day as he beat Bellucci as he was down, I think it was 2-1, entering Tuesday, and he came back and won. Nothing else that I thought really jumped off the page. Mentioned that Rublev lost already. Draper had a marathon in 5 against Emer. Nothing really else, so that's going to do it. Djokovic looked really good, but Capriva also can't serve. That's going to wrap it up for the actual preview, or I should say recap of the first round. Once again, nothing too crazy. A lot of the breaking news was pre-tournament with Murray and with Sabalenka dropping out. And then I mentioned that Rublev got upset and Zhang got upset. Besides that, basically chalk. So either way, moving on to the second round of the event. Before we get into any of that, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because Underdog Fantasy has a Pick 8, which is now live, and it means you can create entries up to 8 picks, and it'll automatically double flex your entries, so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make it, extra ways to win. The excitement's higher than ever. Best part, you can now win up to 325 times your original amount. You can now use specials and boost for all flex entries. I personally am going to use every Pick 8 entry with Angel Reese higher rebounds. I mention this every episode. She had 19 rebounds on Tuesday night. She's one of the best rebounders in WNBA that I've ever seen. So keep taking the higher on her rebounds, and you're not going to complain. Don't miss out on your chance before it's gone. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have no rake. Circa Millions means you pick 5 teams ATS each week and compete for $6 million, or you can choose the Survivor contest, which means you have to survive the NFL Gauntlet to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We also have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com. Save you $50 with promo code SGP. Don't have a trip booked yet for Las Vegas before football. Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world, August 22nd to August 24th. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the first round once again. Now it's time to get into the actual preview for the matches on Wednesday and Thursday. So once again, a reminder, we are not going to cover every single match, but we are going to cover, I'd say, some of the fun ones for the couple days. Not going to put a number on it, whichever I'd say matches catch my eye. If I find the matchup interesting, I'm going to talk about it. So starting off with the first match that I'm intrigued by, we are going to go to a matchup between, I'm trying to think of what matches, by the way, are still first-round matches, because they didn't officially finish all the matches on the slate because of some rain and some darkness delays. So for this one, we're going to start off with the matchup in the second round. I'm going to skip the first-round matchups that haven't happened yet. I'm going to go with Coric taking on Tiafoe. Now for this one, Tiafoe is going to be the favorite, as Tiafoe is around... let me just find the money line price. Tiafoe's around -215. You have Coric, who is +3. Tiafoe's -3, and the over/under set at 40.5. For this one, you have the over 3.5 sets at -210, 10, I mean. The over 4.5 sets is plus 215. Coric plus 1.5 sets is minus 125. Tiafoe minus 1.5 sets is minus 105. Now, Tiafoe has, historically speaking, been decent on grass, and he was awful early on against Arnaldi as he trailed 2-0, came back and 1-5. As for Coric, he had a very easy win against Alves, a relative unknown, as he won in straight sets. They faced off 2 times in their careers. It is tied 1-1, faced off in the Australian Open. Tiafoe won this year in 4 sets, and they faced off in the Davis Cup in 2018, and Coric won that one in 5. So I think Tiafoe's going to win. I think Tiafoe's the better player on grass. Coric has never really been a good grass player, but I do think that Tiafoe is going to stumble for at least one set in this matchup. If I had to go for a value play, I probably would go with Tiafoe to win and each player to win a set. I think that play is kind of appealing. If you want to go for Tiafoe minus 1.5 sets, I don't mind it at minus 125, but I think that for the sake of this matchup, I don't trust Tiafoe enough to look fully engaged and consistent for 3 full sets. I think Coric, who can also be a head case in his own right, is good enough to win at least one set in this match. You might see a breaker or two, but I do think that looking at a way to take Tiafoe while taking some of the juice off is appealing. I'm sure some of you thought I might blindly take Coric because I really don't like Tiafoe as a player, but he is better on grass than Coric. I'm not going to pretend that he isn't. So with that being the case, I think there's some value on Tiafoe once again to win, with each player having some success over the matchup. But I think as these sets play out, Tiafoe will be a bit too solid and a bit too comfortable on grass. Once again, I understand that you're not going to fully dismiss any Grand Slam victory because it still counts the same. But Alves is really not a good clay player at all. And I think that Coric was pretty lucky with his actual opponent in the first round. Arnaldi, yes, he gave Tiafoe a problem. I think Arnaldi's a good player. So I do think that victory was actually pretty impressive by Tiafoe, especially the way that he came back and won. But if you want to get Tiafoe to win with each player to win a set, it's plus 130, which I think is pretty appealing. You're turning a minus 215 favorite to plus 130. I find that being a pretty solid approach. Give me that option for this matchup. Moving on to the next one. We are going to look at a matchup between, for this one, we're going to go to Zhang. We're going to go Zhang against Struff. For this one, Struff's about minus 340, give or take. You have Zhang at around plus 275. For the actual spread for the games, you have Struff, who is minus 4.5. You have Zhang at plus 4.5. The over-under set at 40. You can potentially find a 39.5 if you shop hard enough, but you can find the over 3.5 sets at minus 170. You can find the under 3.5 sets at plus 140. You have Struff minus 1.5 sets at minus 160. Zhang plus 1.5 sets at plus 130 as well. So for this one, Struff did end up looking a little bit, I'd say, uncomfortable in portions of the first round matchup, but he was able to win eventually in 4 sets against Morozin, as he did lose the breaker in the second set. As for Zhang, he dominated against Janvier, so he had a nice win in straight sets. I think that Struff's going to win. He is 2-0 in the head-to-head. Faced off on grass last year in Stuttgart, and Struff ended up winning. You ended up seeing them face off in last year's Miami Open as well, and Struff did win that one in straight sets as well. Now, I think Struff's going to win, so I do think that you have to find some way to find value because minus 365 is not exactly going to cut it. The over could be intriguing if you're expecting at least one breaker, because that's going to give you a lot of leeway if you get a 6-3 set or so. Zhang's a good server, though. Struff's a really good server. I don't mind the over here. I think Struff might win a set, but I think it's pretty similar to the argument I made about the Tiafoe match, where I really think that Struff is just, I'd say, a class above in terms of overall talent and grass skill. So with that being the case, I think I am going to go with the same approach that I took for the Tiafoe match. I'm going to go Struff to win and each player to win a set. I think that way you kind of cover your bases if you get a marathon. We know Zhang is really willing to partake in a lot of marathon matches, especially in Grand Slams. We've seen it over the last year or so, where a lot of his matches tend to go 4 or 5. I think this one probably goes 4. I think Struff wins in 4, but if you want the value, I don't see much value on taking Struff at minus 340 in a parlay. So I'm going to go with the alternative option. Give me Struff to win with each player having success. So I don't mind the over for games in this one, but I also I found 39.5, by the way, on Caesars at minus 120. That I like. I think you're going to get a breaker in there, but I think eventually Struff's going to win. So give me Struff to win and each player to win a set. You can find that available at around plus 120. Moving on to the next matchup for Tuesday, we're going to talk about a lot of matches that still have to be finished, so we're going to skip those. Next one we're going to look at is a matchup between Sonego and Agut. For this one, you have Agut as a favorite, actually, which might surprise some people. But Agut is currently minus 162. Sonego is plus 142. The spread is minus 2.5 for Agut. The spread for Sonego is plus 2.5. The over-under for games is set at 41. For the actual set wagering, you can find Agut minus 1.5 sets at plus 120. Sonego plus 1.5 sets is minus 150. The over 3.5 sets is minus 210. The over 4.5 sets is plus 215. Now, Sonego looked good in his first round matchup. Now, I will admit he had a pretty easy draw. As Sonego in the first round, I don't want to say that he was handed a bye, but Martera has really not been good for the last couple years at this point. So definitely an easier draw for. Sorry, that was a good. I mean, Sonego had a very easy draw because he got Navone, and Navone, we know that he's a talented player on clay. He's a clay specialist. He's really not good on grass at all. And even that match was somewhat competitive, as Sonego did win 6-4, 7-6, 6-4. Gut, though, got a good draw as well, as Martera, as I said before, is not very good on grass. So it's tough to actually have many takeaways for this first round matchup because we saw Martera, who's not very good on grass. We saw, once again, Navone, who's really bad on grass. So I can't really take away much from the first round matches that these guys had. For the second round match, though, I think I'm going to lean to Agut. I think Agut is the right now player in better form. And the fact that Sonego struggled and only won by 5 games against Navone is concerning to me. Navone is really not good on grass, and that felt like a competitive matchup despite ending in straight sets. So I think Agut is going to get the job done. I understand that he's minus 160. I think that might scare off some people. I mentioned this before. Sonego has also not really won back-to-back matches in a while. He's been a mess. And you're looking at him being a minus 2,000 favorite, and he was probably laying close to like 9 games, and he only won by 5. Not sold by that performance by Sonego. I think it might be competitive, but I think Agut is good enough on grass. Agut is a reminder, that is most comfortable on grass. Grass is his highest win percentage of any surface, which might surprise some people, but the point is I don't trust Sonego. I faded him after winning matches because I believe he's not won a back-to-back. He's not won consecutive matches in months. So give me a Agut in this one. I'm going to keep it simple. I don't really trust Sonego. Might be fun. Maybe goes 4 or 5. But I think Agut is right now in better form, and that's good enough for me. Moving on to the... we'll cover 2 more matches for Tuesday. For Wednesday. They'll move on to Thursday. So I'm going to look at the matchup between Wawrinka and Monfils. Bit of a throwback matchup, as you're looking at Monfils being a massive favorite. Monfils around minus $3, and we're looking at Wawrinka being around plus 250, give or take. For the game spread, you have Monfils minus 4. For the spread for Wawrinka, you have plus 4. The over-under for games is set at 40. If you want to go for sets, you can find the over 3.5 sets at minus 180. You can find Wawrinka plus 1.5 sets at even money. Monfils minus 1.5 sets at minus 130. The over 4.5 sets, by the way, is plus 240. Now, for the head-to-head, Monfils has gotten the better of Wawrinka, as he has won 4 of the 6 meetings. If you are also looking at the head-to-head recently, the most recent meeting was 2019, so nothing to talk about. Never faced off on grass either. Now, Monfils has been, once again, fine. He beat Manarino in 4. He cashed us the dog. I'm not going to complain. Manarino's a good grass player, but he was in really bad form. He looked pretty good in Mallorca. I ended up losing to the eventual champion, Tabilo, in the semis. But the point is, I do think that Wawrinka, who's been kind of, I'd say, I'm trying to get the right word here. He's kind of been in hiding. I'll put it that way, because after the French Open, he did not play any grass matches. Then he ended up beating Broome, a relative unknown British player. So I get why Monfils is favored. However, $3, I'm not laying $3 with Monfils. I think the value is on Wawrinka. I think this price is nuts. Monfils, I understand, is, I'd say you'd argue, in better fitness, or he has better fitness than Wawrinka, but with both guys being up there in years, a 5-setter can go either way. I'm not going to write off Wawrinka if this match goes the distance. The value, as far as I'm concerned, is on Wawrinka. There's no way Monfils should be minus 300. If he wins the match, he wins the match. But 300 is crazy to me. So give me Wawrinka for the value. I really think this match could be competitive. So if you want to go for an even bigger long shot, you can go Wawrinka to win once again with each player to win a set, which is kind of becoming my favorite prop in this actual event. But I do think Monfils is once again susceptible to making a lot of extremely dumb shot decisions, and his serve has been kind of a mess since the injuries have stacked themselves up against him. If Wawrinka's serve is on, and if Monfils is going to, I'd say, struggle with the shot selection, I think Wawrinka can really make it interesting. I think this price is way too big, and if you want to get Wawrinka, who once again is at about plus 250, You can get Wawrinka to win with each player to win a set, and you can get that at plus 310. I like it. I think Wawrinka is probably going to win. If I had to pick a length, I would probably say 5. But I think that it's going to be a marathon. I don't mind the over potentially, but I do think that you're going to see Wawrinka really give Monfils all he can handle. So I think this line's disrespectful. I think it's giving Monfils too much credit. Give me Wawrinka in this one for the value alone. For the last match we're going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about Sinner and Berrettini because I just think Sinner's going to win, and Sinner's been dropping sets recently, so I don't really want to go with Sinner in any capacity, but I think he's going to win the match, obviously. I'm going to go with the other one. That should be fun, the late match between Harris and Shelton. Now, Harris got the job done for us, cashed the lock with that crazy final point where he ended up winning match point with a diving volley, which you don't see that often. Point is, though, Harris, we know, is a very solid server, and after struggling in the first 2 sets, he regained his rhythm, and he was able to dominate the serves, I should say the serving games against Mickelson, as he had, I think it was 32 aces in that matchup. I want to quickly pull it up. But he served very well. Mickelson is not a big server for a guy of his overall size, and you saw Harris finish with 34. So that was definitely helpful. Harris did win a bunch of first serve points, did win 90, he won 87% of his first serve points. The issue was he only won 41% of the second serve points. So if the first serve's on, good luck trying to break them because you're going to have a hard time. Now, Shelton was really underwhelming in the return games early on day 1 against Bellucci, but then he was able to get back on track as he was able to win in 5. So the point is Shelton is still not really looked that sharp on grass, and I do think after losing to Jube in Mallorca, which was a very solid draw for him to make a deep run, and he immediately fell apart, I really don't want anything to do with Shelton, and Shelton is favored in the matchup. Shelton is actually, if you want to go by odds, minus 140. You see Harris at plus 120. For the over-under, you have 44. I saw the tie-break number was over-under 1.5. I don't want the over there. But you're looking at the game spread being minus 1.5 for Shelton, plus 1.5 for Harris. I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm going to lean to Harris. I think that even though Shelton might be the better player, he has definitely not played like it on grass, and he's been a mess. And even though he was able to come back against Bellucci, he also got burned by the schedule because this matchup is going to be taking place on Wednesday, and he did have to finish his match on Tuesday. So he had to play 2 full sets, which is not exactly the, I'd say, schedule you want if you're picking, because that means you have to expend some energy coming back from 2 sets to 1 down, and you have to play against Harris, who's going to go to probably a couple breakers with you and at least match you with first serve success. So with that being the case, I like Shelton to potentially lose here at a pretty good price. I think that minus 140 is a bit off. I think Harris has the rest advantage because he ended up not playing on Tuesday after winning his crazy match on Monday. Shelton had to play. It was competitive anyway. So I do think that's going to help out Harris, but I see a lot of breakers, and I just think that Harris is right now a bit more reliable. And with that being the case, give me Harris at what I think is a pretty good plus money price. That's going to wrap it up for the Wednesday card. Now it's time to move on to the Thursday card. So for this one, you have, I'm trying to think of what matchup to cover first. I think we'll cover the Brits going at it. We'll cover Draper against Norrie. This one should be fun. Draper had a 5-setter in the first round, and Norrie ended up having a very easy win against Diaz Acosta. So I do think you're looking at what should be a very interesting matchup. But you're looking at the actual betting odds here. Norrie is actually a dog at plus 220. You have Draper at plus 278. They faced off one time in their careers, faced off in Miami in 2022, and Norrie actually did win that one in straight sets. So I think with that being the case, I think the value's on Norrie, but I want to make sure I actually got that right. Is that the... I think that's the right odds that I'm looking at. But the point is, I believe Draper's favored for that matchup because he was the second favorite to win the quarter before the event started. Yeah, 5-setter against Emer is not going to wow me, to be honest. I think Norrie's pretty live to win this, and I think the line's disrespectful. Now, both guys are lefties. Both guys are not exactly the biggest servers. Draper's serve has definitely improved over the last year or so, which is why he did win a title on grass this year. But I do think 3 out of 5 sets can make the match quite interesting because Norrie is one of the most fit guys on tour. He might not have much firepower, but he definitely has a lot of stamina. And Draper really doesn't have that. Draper did win in 5, but we know the injuries have accumulated over the years for Draper, and his fitness is always a concern. So I think minus 290 for Draper, which I found on DraftKings, is really too high. I think the value's on Norrie. Norrie did win the head-to-head meeting, but that was a couple years ago. You can kind of toss it out. But I think this line should honestly be closer to like minus 160 for Draper. I think Draper should be favored. But Norrie's off a very easy straight set win. Draper had a marathon against Emer, who's really not known for being a great grass player by any means. It's not even M-Yemmer. That's E-Yemmer. That's the worst version. So I think Draper's being overhyped a bit, and I think 290 is too big of a price. So give me Norrie to outlast Draper in what could be a 4 or 5 setter. So I'm actually going to go contrarian here. Give me Norrie as a dog in this one. I think the price is just too much to consider with Draper. So I'm going to take it with the dog in this one. Moving on to the next matchup, going to talk about, for this one, you know what? Yeah, sure, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Giron against Zverev. So Zverev had a very easy win. Really could not have been much easier as he faced off against Baena, and Baena we know is awful on grass. But you ended up seeing Zverev win that one in straight sets. Giron faced off against basically a nobody and did lose a set as he ended up losing the first set to Searle, but he bounced back as he won the next 3 sets rather convincingly. So Giron, we know, has actually been decent in the head-to-head against Zverev in the one meeting. Faced off in the Australian Open in 2024, Zverev did win, but the first 2 sets went to breakers, and Giron did win a set. So I think Giron can maybe make the match interesting. Zverev, though, is a massive favorite, about minus 770. You're looking at Giron at around 5-1. I think Zverev's going to win, but I think Giron can make it interesting. I'm not saying Giron's going to get buried in this matchup. I maybe wouldn't mind Giron plus the games. I think that Zverev, despite looking sharp in the first round, is still not known for being a very good grass player. I think grass is his weakest surface based on results. So that being the case, I am going to go with Giron plus the games. I think that he can hang in there. Is he going to win? I'm not going to say that, but I think he can maybe win a set, but I think the game should be close. Give me Giron plus the games in that one. For the next matchup, we're going to look at Hurkacz against Fies. Now, Hurkacz was really bad early in his matchup against Albert as he lost the first set 7-5. And I believe he was down a break, I think, in the second set, but he was able to get the job done in 4. As for Fies, he had a nice showing as he was able to win his first-round match against Stricker in 4. Stricker, we know, made a very solid run in the U.S. Open last year, but he's objectively a challenger-level player who's not very good, just being honest. He's very young, so he can improve, but the U.S. Open seems to be more of a flash in the pan as the year is going on. As for Fies, I think he's the inferior player here. I think Hurkacz will look sharp with the serve. Fies, we know it can be a head case, but I think you're looking at what should be a competitive matchup here. I think Fies can win a set. I'm not going to tell you that Hurkacz is going to lose, but I think that Hurkacz can lose a set. Minus 450, I think, is an understandable price for Hurkacz, but I probably would price it a bit lower. I probably would have like 340, give or take, where he's a sizable favorite, but not as sizable as this. So I'm going to go with Fies for the value. I think that Fies can hang in there. I don't mind, once again, Hurkacz to win and both players to win a set, but I think Fies can actually, in theory, pull off an upset. I think he's been solid on grass recently, ended up beating, for example, Stricker, lost to Zverev, but did win a set in Halle, so that's a pretty good showing there. Beat Kempfer in straight sets, beat Monkish in straight sets, so beat a decent amount of main draw people on grass recently. Beat Kazo as well, lost to Humbert in straight sets with a breaker at the end of it. So I think Fies can hang in there. I don't mind the over. I think he might get a breaker or 2, but I think Fies can actually give Hurkacz problems, and Hurkacz did not look great in the first round. Albert is personally a guy that I think is not very talented, but he's very, very crafty, and he's kind of tenacious. He's not going to give you any free points. Albert's been around for a long time, and he does seem to have a certain, I don't know, dog to him, where I respect his constant effort and his willingness to just lay it all out there on the court in order to try to win. Now, does he win a lot? No. But I think that for the sake of that matchup, Hurkacz showed that he's vulnerable. I think that Fies is obviously more talented than Albert is. So with that being the case, give me Fies to keep it close, but I think that I think that Hurkacz gets it done, but I think that Fies, in theory, could make the match interesting. I don't mind him winning a set or maybe covering the spread. I think that's going to do it, though, for the matches. I'll do one more, though, which should be fun. This is going to be the Perricard against Nishioka match. Perricard is the lucky loser, but he is the favorite at minus 250. Perricard at a marathon, as he ended up beating Korda. He had the only break in the entire match in 5 sets, had 52 aces in the process. As for Nishioka, ended up seeing him look pretty good in the first round as he beat Borges in 4. Does Borges have any grass, I'd say, success at all in his career? Absolutely not. So I don't know what to really read from that, but the point is Perricard did beat the better player. Even though Korda is an absolute idiot, he is still a pretty talented grass player, and Perricard got the job done. Was in some tough spots, and he was able to serve bombs as he did not get broken in the entire match. Now, they faced off one time in their careers. Perricard did win. That was a walkover, though, on clay this year. So it was a win via walkover, which really doesn't count. So they've never actually faced off against each other in a match. So just keep that in mind. But if I had to go for one play in this matchup, I think I would have to consider the aces for Perricard. I got to see what the number is, but whatever it is, it's probably too low because he had 50 in the first round. I'm looking at bet 365 right now, and 20 plus aces is minus 3,300. So I don't even see an aces line for Perricard, but if you can, I think he breaks 30 here. I think he might end up having a ton. So I think that Perricard's going to win. I think his serve is going to be too much for Nishioka to handle. Nishioka also not that tall, and he gave up 18 aces to Borges in the first round. And Borges isn't exactly known for being a great server. He's fine, but now you're against Perricard. Have fun. I think Perricard's going to serve bombs. I think Nishioka will break him at some point in the matchup, but I do think that anytime, I misspoke actually, it was 21 aces to Borges. 21. Yeah, Perricard might go for 40 in this one. So if you do like the over in games and you think that ends up turning into a 4-setter or beyond, you might want to look for an underdog lineup and maybe consider putting in Perricard for his aces in this one. Because I just think that with Nishioka's lack of size, Perricard is going to completely just serve bombs. I don't want to compare him to Isner, but it's kind of a similar vibe when you watch him play where the other guy just feels helpless, and that's how I think Nishioka is going to feel. So I'm going to go with the over and aces for Perricard in that one as my main look for that match. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the preview of the second round. I saved a couple of matches, though, for the lock and dog segment, so I purposefully skipped those. So there are more matches to talk about that I intentionally passed over for the final segment. But before we continue that, to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm is a great place to help you with your own player props, because Rhythm does have a lot of tools that can help transform complex data into actual insights, empowering bettors with smarter data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easier and more enjoyable. The models also were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data that help drive you to making better AI-backed betting decisions. Rhythm also has a lot of great projections for WNBA and golf. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportscampodcast.com. There's Rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the second round. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I actually am going to go to the early match on Friday, so that's why I'm recording it now. Going to go to the Ruud and Fognini match. Might sound dangerous, but I'm doing it. I am going to go with the over 3.5 sets at minus 135 on Caesars. Now, Ruud did win a match in straight sets on grass. Congratulations. I'm shocked. I thought Bolt might have actually won a set against him. It was competitive, though, as Bolt ended up only losing by 5 games. So I believe he covered the spread in the match, but he ended up losing anyway in straight sets. He had chances, though, just did not convert enough break points. Ruud served very well, which was kind of unexpected. And even with that being the case, you ended up seeing Bolt have multiple chances to break in several sets. So I do think that even though Ruud played well, I don't think Bolt is that good of a player in general. Fognini, though, was randomly really good as he was able to beat Van Asch in straight sets in the first round. Now, Ruud does have that advantage, but they have not faced off in a couple of years, and they have no meetings on grass. Now, Fognini, historically speaking, is actually a pretty good grass player. And he has been able to win sets recently on grass. He's won at least one set in 7 straight grass matches, including the first round this year of Wimbledon. Ruud, though, despite winning in straight sets in the first round against Bolt, he has lost at least one set in 6 of his last 8 grass matches. So it was 6 of 7. Now it's 6 of 8. But Fognini has looked sharp on grass, and I do think that he's good enough to win a set. Ruud is a guy who really is uncomfortable on grass, and I'm not going to overreact to one match where he served bombs the entire time and still couldn't cover the spread. I think Ruud's going to look bad for at least one set. I think Fognini can't exactly be trusted to win in straight sets. So I'm going to fade the really bad grass player, historically speaking, with Ruud, and I am going to assume Fognini can do a little bit of damage here. Give me the over 3.5 sets at minus 135 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to a 2-pick parlay, but I am going to stick with the over 3.5 set trend. I'm going to go to a matchup between Greek Spore and Kekmanovic, and I am going to go with the over 3.5 sets, but I am going to parlay that with Thompson and Nakashima over 3.5 sets, and the Tupic pays out a plus 118. So that's going to be the dog for the show. Now, a couple reasons why I'm going to go with the Greek Sport match over 3.5 sets first. We saw Kecmanovic win in 4 sets in the first round. Greek Sport did a good job of winning in straight sets against Golan. However, they faced off last month on grass, and we ended up seeing them go to 3 sets, and every set was a breaker. So with that being the case, I don't see much separating these guys on grass. I think Greek Sport's better because he has more pedigree on grass, but we just saw Kecmanovic give Greek Sport everything he could handle. That went to 3 sets, and that was, once again, an all tiebreak fest. I see at least 4 here. I think that Kecmanovic is good enough to win a set, not consistent enough to actually win in straight sets, and I do think Greek Sport is a solid player, but I think Kecmanovic can win at least 1 set here. If I had to guess an actual outcome, probably Greek Sport in 4, but I think that you're looking at a competitive matchup, so give me the over 3.5 sets in that one. Kecmanovic, though, to go through some recent trends, has dropped sets recently. He has dropped at least 1 set in 8 of his last 10 matches, and you're looking at Greek Sport, despite winning in straight sets in the first round of Wimbledon, he's lost at least 1 set in 19 of his last 22 matches, which sounds wild, but the point is he is really vulnerable to dropping sets. So with that being the case for both guys, give me the over 3.5 sets as the first leg in this parlay. For the second, like I mentioned before, Thompson and Nakashima. Nakashima has also been dropping a lot of sets recently. He has lost at least 1 set in 10 of his last 14. So Nakashima did win in straight sets in the first round against Baez. Baez, we know, is a really bad grass player, so I'm not going to overreact too much to it. Thompson, though, has lost at least 1 set in 11 of his last 12 matches, so he has been also vulnerable to potential lulls over the course of a match. Same thing with Nakashima. So I do think both guys kind of have similar, I'd say, flaws with their overall play style, which is why I do think that it will result in a long match. And the head-to-head does support it because they faced off multiple times, and every match has been competitive. I think 3 out of the 5 have gone to a deciding set, including the Wimbledon match last year. Faced off in Wimbledon and ended up going 5 sets. So with that being the case, I see a pretty similar story to this match. Maybe not the exact carbon copy 5 sets, but do I think that each guy is good enough to win at least 1 set in this matchup? Yes. I think that the over 3.5 sets is a good parlay piece, and I feel pretty good about it. So I'm going to throw it in there with Greek Sport. So once again, the plays for the episode, the lock's going to be on Ruud and Fognini over 3.5 sets of minus 135, and my dog's going to be on the Tupic parlay. I'm going to go with the over 3.5 sets in the Greek Sport match, partnered with the over 3.5 sets in the Thompson match, and that pays out a plus 118 also on Caesars. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Reminder back once again for the 3rd round of Wimbledon, and until then, find me on the NBA show, find me on the WNBA show, find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.